This is day 2 of comparing fractional values using symbols like less than, greater than, equal to. In this first example, the fraction skill we're working on is how to compare different sized pieces. So I want you to first think about the 4/9. So think about a circle being divided into 9 pieces, and we have 4 out of those 9 pieces. Then I want you to think about this fraction here on the right, the 4/7, and think about a circle being divided into 7 pieces. And once again, we have 4 of those pieces colored in. Now, we need to compare the size piece that we have. So look over here. If you divide a circle into 9 pieces, each of these pieces is going to be smaller than if you divided a circle into just 7 pieces. So a 1/9 slice, that size piece is smaller than a 1/7 size piece. So if I have 4 smaller pieces compared to 4 larger pieces, these 4/9 pieces are equal to less than 4/7. Now, when in doubt, if you don't have this skill where you know how to compare different sized pieces, what you could do is you could just find the least common denominator, and then you could create equivalent fractions, and then you could compare the equivalent fractions. So now these are the same size pieces, so all you'd have to do is say, okay, 28 is less than 36, so it'd be easier to compare if you got equivalent fractions. The fraction skill we're working on here is we're comparing same size pieces. So we're comparing thirds to thirds. So let me draw over here. We have a whole over here, 3/3. So that's representative of the 1. And then this portion is representative of the 2/3. So this is what I would say a larger amount of negatives. So if you have a larger amount of negatives, that means that it is going to be further to the left on the number line. So -1 and 2/3 I'll place way down here on the number line. Then I'm going to place -2/3. It's not going to be as far down on the number line. So since -2/3 is closer to 0, it's to the right of -1 and 2/3. It's actually the larger value. All right, we are comparing different size pieces once again, but this time we need to think about this in terms of negatives, so it can be a little bit more confusing. That's why I have the number line that we're going to use. So I hope you can see that we have one slice here which is larger than the slice over here, because if you divide a pie into 7 pieces, each slice is going to be tinier than if you divide a pie into just 4 pieces. So when I think about the negative numbers, I compare them to where they are in relation to 0. So -1/7 is not going to be over that far. -1/7 we'll say is about here. And then -1/4 is further to the left, so we could say it is more negative. So -1/4, since it's further to the left, is less than -1/7. And again, when in doubt, you can always change them so that they have the same denominator by creating equivalent fractions. And then once again, you'll see that -7/28, that's going to be further negative than -4/28. Okay, the fraction skill we're working on here is comparing a fraction's closeness to a whole, or closeness to 1. So that's one of the skills I'm supposed to teach you. Yeah, let's use blue. Okay, so let's think about how far away 11/12 is from being a whole. Now, 12 twelfths is equal to 1. So I'm saying, how close is 11 twelfths to 1? Well, it is only one slice away. So it is 1/12 away from being equal to 12 twelfths. So if I had just one more slice, this circle would represent a whole. Okay, now, 4/5. How far away is that from 5/5? 5/5 is a whole. So we're saying, how far away is 4/5 from being a whole? Well, look at the picture. It is one slice away. If we had one more of these 1/5, then it would be a whole. We'll compare the two size pieces. 1/5 is a larger piece than 1/12. And if 1/5 is a larger piece, then 4/5 is further away from 1. It's smaller than 1. It's smaller than 11 twelfths is. 11 twelfths is greater than 4/5 because 11 twelfths is closer to being equal to 1. Now, if that doesn't really make sense to you, you can always find a denominator that you could use for both of these fractions, create equivalent fractions, and then compare. And I hope you can see more easily here that 55/60 is going to be larger than 48/60. All right, now we're comparing, the last fraction skill we're going to be working on is comparing fractions to 1/2. All right, so we have 7/18 over here. Now, I want you to think about, in terms of 18ths, what would the numerator have to be so that this fraction is equal to 1/2? Well, think about it. We have to multiply 2 times 9 to get to 18. So we're going to multiply 1 by 9 to get the numerator. Another way to come up with 1/2 in a different form is to just look at the denominator and say, well, what's half of 18? Well, that's 9. So 9/18 would be equal to 1/2. Now we compare to 1/2. So 7/18 we're going to compare to 9/18, and 7/18 is less than 9/18. So we can say that 7/18 is less, that's supposed to say less than 1/2. So 7/18 is less than 1/2. All right, so let's look over here at 3/5, and we need to think about, how would you write 1/2 in terms of fifths? Well, you have to multiply 2 by 2.5 to get 5. So we would multiply the numerator by 2.5, and we would get that the numerator would have to be 2.5 for this fraction to equal 1/2. Another way to think about it is to just say, well, what is half of 5? Well, whenever I'm thinking about half of an odd number, is I split it up into the even number just lower than 5, or than the odd number, and then 1 unit. So 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. So then I just have to think of half of the even number, which is easy, and then half of 1 I have memorized as 0.5. So that would mean that half of 5 is 2.5. All right, so now let's compare 3/5 to 2.5. Well, 3 slices is more than 2.5 slices, so we would say that 3/5 is greater than 2.5, or we could say greater than 1/2, since 2.5 is equal to 1/2. So it's greater than 1/2. So 7/18 is less than 1/2, and 3/5 is greater than 1/2, then we know that 7/18 is less than 3/5. If that, comparison to half doesn't make sense to you, that fraction comparison skill, then you can always get common denominators. We could use 90, create equivalent fractions, And then we can compare, and I hope you can see that 35/90ths is less than 54/90ths. In summary, we reviewed 4 different fraction skills. We compared different size pieces. We compared same size pieces. We compared the fraction's closeness to 1 or closeness to a whole. And we also compared the fractions to 1/2.